Welcome to the Bad Tutors podcast. If you're here for the newest up-to-date accurate information on the nerdy topics that are near and dear to your heart, well, let me tell you, you ended up in the wrong place. For real this time. There's not going to be any hot takes or grandiose displays of misinformation, and no blood vessels will be blown. It's just me this time. Ian will be traveling to Gencon in the coming week, and to lighten the load on editing that he has to do before his vacation, I decided that because my idea for this episode was so single-sided, that I would just record a solo episode, and Ian will do a very light amount of editing, and we'll ship it out to you guys. I also want to apologize in advance for the ASMR level of this podcast. My partner's kid is sleeping in the room next door, and that is another reason why we decided to do a solo episode for this one. So, this episode's going to be just me kind of meditating on the role-playing that I've done for the past 11 years. I started playing TTRPGS when I was 15 with my older brother and a couple of friends of his from Little Caesars that he worked at. We were playing 4th edition D&D, and for that reason and a couple others, it holds a special place in my heart. After that, I went to college and resumed playing 5th edition with a group of guys who are now my closest friends in the world, and we play once a week, every week, and for the most part have since my freshman year of college, which was now 8 years ago. Ian is one of those guys. A couple other people that I'll talk about in this episode are also members of that group. Somewhere along the way, I was working at a coffee shop that was local to my hometown, and I was chatting with a coworker, and through our discussions we discovered that we both love TTRPGs, and he introduced me to a game called Vampire the Masquerade, which I've been playing with him for 7 years. And to get into it, I'll just say and start by saying a lot of the choices that I make and that I think about while I play happen in two different mindsets. The first one would be a perspective mindset. With all the information that I had at the time and the events that had happened very close to when I make a decision in the game, I refer to that as perspective thinking or reasoning. And the contrary to that would be retroactive reasoning. This is having had some time and seen the possible ramifications or outcomes of my choices, and looking back and then deciding if that was or was not a good choice. So I'll start with the 5th edition game that happened in college, mostly because I can't remember the 4th edition game that I played too much. It was all of our first time playing. There wasn't a very concise story for us to follow. It was all homebrew, and honestly none of us were super interested in the story, and that might have been a failing of us as players, but that was the reality of it. We were there to roll dice, kill bad guys, and shoot the shit with our friends. So I'll start by talking about the 5th edition adventure path that was ran by one of my best friends, Trevor. It was
Storm King's Thunder.
And mostly what I want to talk about here is me and Ian's friend Jacob, who we talked a lot about in our one-shot versus campaign game, because he runs very creative one-shots. Jacob's character is playing a cleric, and I was playing at the time a monk. And Jacob's character had a lot of really cool spells and powers that let him influence people and kind of, in a sense, mind control them, whether it be suggestion, command, maybe a couple of knowledge domain cleric abilities, but all in all, cool things to do that a player might want to do. And my character, my monk, just went really fast and hit people. And at one point I grabbed an artifact that we were looking for, and for one reason or another, probably a bad reason, I decided to just keep the idea that I had that artifact retrieved obscured from my party. Or maybe I wasn't handing it over. It's at this point that Jacob's cleric used some sort of enchantment magic to compel me to turn over that artifact. Now, prospectively, that pissed me off because I felt like I was losing agency in my character. I knew that I had a plan to keep that artifact safe from falling in the wrong hands, and I was trying to retire my character anyway because I was itching to play a bard, and that was all of the prospective reasons as to why I sort of did what I did. I held on to the artifact. I was mind controlled. I was forced to turn over the artifact, and then I went home and pouted and bitched about it. Retroactively, the choice that I made was actively harming the story and was probably upsetting some of the other players, because I'm now delaying the story to make my character more of a hero than them, even though they were all part of retrieving this artifact. After I retired the character, I played my bard and was given the opportunity to get my Tyler's revenge on Jacob for being slighted. We were stuck in a ravine of sorts, and I abandoned the party there and left on a flying broomstick and traveled back to the city that we were in. And it took the rest of the party about a week to get there, and during that downtime I went and tried to slander Jacob's character as much as possible by in character composing a song and performing it that was basically like a hit piece or a diss track, if you will, from my bard. And again, the reason why I felt like that is it wasn't just my character that was getting mind controlled. It was all the other players were also getting, compulsive spells to get them to act how Jacob's character wanted them to act. when the party rejoined me in the city, there was a big commotion, and from there we sort of came to a halt, and Trevor called us out into the hall and said, listen, he doesn't want to play with your character anymore. And I said, I don't want to play with his character anymore. And we were both being, stubborn jackasses. And in the end, I don't know how we got here, but we ended up just playing Pathfinder, ran by one of our other friends, Josh, and then we played that campaign for years to come. And now Jacob's one of my best friends, and I feel like we both sort of joke about it being the foundation of our friendship, of just being total assholes to each other over D&D. And I guess the point of sharing that is it's never worth it to act selfishly in a game if it causes other people displeasure or hinders their ability to enjoy the game. That one should be pretty straightforward, but I had a lot of maturing to do as a person, mostly, but also as a role player. And that's what I have for 5th edition. I talked about playing in Vampire the Masquerade. Not a whole lot here that I want to talk about besides making some poor choices in character. Without getting too deep into it, there are these things that are there's like tenets laid out to each fledgling vampire, and one of them is to respect the vampires that are elder to you, who have been around longer. And my first game of vampire, of course, the first thing I did was break the tenet of respecting your elder, and I accused them of doing a social faux pas of using powers inside of a, what is essentially a safe space for vampires to meet and chat. I accused them of using powers inside of this space known as the Elysium, when in reality it was me that did that. And prospectively, I was just playing a little rash. I had never played the game too much, and I didn't know what kind of consequences that could lead to. Retroactively, I was in that elder's debt for the entirety of the game as it played out over the next year and a half. The sort of social contract that my character was bound into was a great hindrance to my character, and I would do it again because I think it made the story much better. And I don't think that the tenets that you have to uphold as a fledgling vampire are there to discourage you from doing things. I think it just kind of gives you an outline as to how your character might behave, and then what would happen if they are broken. So not as much to go into there, but I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the vampire games that I've been a part of. Let's talk about my Pathfinder character for Rise of the Runelords. His name was Drassel. He did some super evil stuff. He was never intended to be evil to start. He was actually true neutral. And he was a Dhampir, which is half vampire. And he was using an archetype specific to wizard that basically summoned the innate power in his blood to control undead. So I was going to bring about a massive army of undead to accomplish my goals, and I had some in-character reasons as to why he was studying necromancy, but they didn't end up mattering because we found this book, which essentially amounts to the Necronomicon, a book of evil and really bad stuff. And it was obviously cursed. It was given to my character as it was exuding necromantic aura, and he became very possessive of it as per the GM's wishes and whispers on Roll 20 that nobody else should take this from you. The first night after I got it, my friend Trevor was playing a gnome alchemist. He took it, and I was whispering the GM, okay, what do? I know he has it out of character, but I don't know in character. And he goes, oh no, as soon as you wake up, you realize that it's missing. And so I go and I confront him. And this whole time he's saying, I just want to look at it, I just want to read it, you can have it back after I'm finished, all this stuff. Just kind of trying to barter and haggle with someone who is really not trying to sell what they have. And because of this, I'm messaging Trevor as we're talking to each other in character. I'm saying, hey, I might have to kill you if you keep going this way. And I got the A-OK from him. So I cast a spell that if he failed to save, he would die. And I killed him. Now I did all of this, if we're going to the perspective of all this, I knew that we had a potion that could bring him back to life. I knew that Trevor was okay with me acting out the cursed aspect of this cursed object, and I knew that the person running the game, Josh, was doing this purposefully. So with all that being said, retroactively, this is one of the better story beats that this character had. He killed one of his friends, kind of realized what was happening, but also knew that he couldn't get away from it, and now it was a conflict that he had between him and some of the other party members. My next step, almost immediately after, was to go and get as many bodies as possible. And where better to do that than a graveyard? I flew in and began the process of animating a bunch of bodies in a graveyard to stuff them into a bag of holding and then fly away. And wouldn't you know it, there is a cleric in a graveyard at a church. Who would have guessed that in D&D? I probably should have. But I was killed by that cleric. I almost didn't stand a chance when I thought back on it. But I was really just looking to build an army quick and do the thing that my build was sort of centered around, which is just have a lot of skeletons that would reassemble themselves after they were killed. It was a really cool idea in theory. In practice, it really bogged down combat and made it not that fun for the GM to sort of handle and balance around. So I get myself killed. And prospectively, like I said, he was just going to get an army. That's all he was out there to do. Retroactively, this led to me playing a character that I couldn't even tell you if I wanted to play, because he died in the first session from a lucky roll on the GM's part and a bad sequencing of casting a spell and movement on my part. And then the next character that I played was not really a character that I wanted to be playing, but I liked him enough to keep going. And eventually I was kind of grumbling to Josh, the guy running the game, and he pretty much asked me, like, hey, do you want to just play Drassel again? I said, of course I want to play Drassel. I worked really hard on his build and everything. I would really like another chance at playing my Necromancer. And so it turns out this book that he died carrying found its way back to our party, and my previous character, Drassel, sort of in a poltergeisty way left the book. His spirit left the book and took over my current character's body, which made for a cool story beat when that was revealed, and all of a sudden the character that was a rogue that was hitting people with a book or trying to steal stuff off of them mid-combat started slinging fireballs around, and it was a nice little return for my character. And the last thing that I want to talk about in the perspective versus retroactive meditation that I'm doing here is when Drassel got himself killed again. There is a spell in Pathfinder 1st edition called Contingency, and you can cast any spell that targets yourself as a contingency. So it can be a personal spell or a spell that has a target where you can be a valid target. So I cast Create Undead with a contingency to bring himself back as a Juju zombie, which in Pathfinder is a zombie that has all of the class levels and personality and memories of the character or the person who was slain and then brought back as a Juju zombie. That was the contingency that I had laid on myself. And as we're getting up to the final dungeon, the big bad, I had one of the other players kill me by antagonizing him a little bit. And when he did, I became a Juju zombie, but I was told that I no longer had control over my character in that scene, and so I was a little perplexed because I had everything worked out perfectly. This should be exactly how it worked, you know? I did all of the research, and this is how the rules are written. This works just as I wanted it to. And, well, Josh had a different idea. The entire time that I was carrying this book around, not only did my soul get trapped in it when I died, but somebody else's soul did too. And so when my character died again, the body that got, or rather the soul that got brought back, was not mine. And to avoid spoiling anything from that particular adventure path, let's just say that it was a not great dude. So after that session, I was kind of filled in on what exactly it means for him to have taken over the character that I was playing, and then he handed the reins back to me to play him again, and it was a lot of fun. It certainly made my character more powerful, but in the moment, the perspective side of things, I regretted it instantly. I knew that what I had done, as soon as I was told I wasn't going to finish this scene as my character, I knew that what I did was a big mistake, and I potentially just screwed a lot of things up. Retroactively, it was actually the best thing that could have possibly happened, because in Pathfinder, your Constitution score determines your health, and zombies and undead don't have a Constitution score. They use their charisma to determine hit points instead. And so I got a massive boost to my hit points, and I also got some super sick spell-like abilities to use a number of times per day that I certainly put to use, and it was a lot of fun playing this other person that took control of my character at the end of the campaign. And I think most of the other people that I played with would agree that while it was probably the worst thing that could have happened to the party, it was the best thing that could have happened to my character's story. I think it would be wrong to not talk about my current character, Emil, when Ian is the co-host of this podcast. Emil is a fragile teenager who has massive potential with magic, but the health pool of we'll call it a level 4 fighter, it feels like. In one, albeit long combat, I fully died 3 times. The results of which were thwarted by a quick resurrection spell called Breath of Life. Maybe that same spell again, I can't remember. And then, unfortunately, Ian had to use the monkey's paw artifact to cast a wish spell to bring me back. I don't want to tell Ian's story because I feel like as soon as he made that wish, the conclusion of that wish and what happens is his story. But what essentially happened was Ian had to sacrifice his character to bring mine back. And even now, I still feel conflicted on all of that, because after all this time playing tabletop games, I'm always ready to bring a new character in. I have really bad luck with my rolls. The people running games have really good luck against me when they roll. At least it feels that way. This character was almost designed to die, and dying 3 times in one combat is certainly illuminating to that. And despite all of that, Ian still took a chance to bring my character back, for one reason or another. It happened, and I'm still playing to this day that character. I'm always having fun being a glass cannon. But it's perspectively, I was just doing what my character would always do, which is try and deal as much damage as possible to reduce the risk of getting hit by multiple enemies. And in doing that, I got fucked up and I died. It's looking back at it that I'm still not sure I didn't know that Emil was going to be brought back in the manner that he was. And if I had known, if I had that perspective at the time, I would have at least checked in with Ian. But most likely I just would have shot the idea down. I would have rather just played a new character. I know how to make them. I enjoy making them. I wouldn't want anybody's character and their story to be cut short. Now, I've talked with Ian about this. He said he felt his story was kind of concluding with his arc naturally anyways. But I didn't want to deny him the satisfaction of a potential happy ending with his character, whether that was a possibility or not. And I still feel bad about it. With all that being said, I think it's important when you are playing the game and you're making decisions to not think about to not think about the guilt or shame or embarrassment you might have after the fact, and to only act how you can with the knowledge that you have, because hindsight will always be 20/20, and it's impossible to perceive things retroactively when you are still in the present and you're making those decisions. It's something that I'm still working on. I will admit there is a bit of a conflict right now with my current character Emil and sort of how things are going, and I can say for certain that I'm having trouble keeping my desire to act as my character would, or my perspective. I'm having trouble keeping that in check because I'm trying to think of all the ways that this could really upset other people's plans, or hopefully not upset other people, but it could. And I'm trying to be cognizant of that and avoid it if I can. But also, when it comes down to it, it's my character's story, and there is a bit of a tension right now, and sometimes tension can be resolved and sometimes it can't. I'm certainly one to seek the resolution first before putting the character away, and I don't want to stop playing my character, nor do I think I'm going to. I just think that I'm rambling. I'll just move on to the next part of this episode that I want to talk about, and that is I need to focus more on playing my role as it sort of matters in the party. So currently I have 4 characters. One of them is a character in Vampire the Masquerade. Without getting too much into how we play Vampire with this specific group, party cohesion is not anything that we worry about, as we're, most of us, doing our own thing and striving to achieve our own goals. And sometimes that involves stabbing each other in the back, and that's all sort of a verbal handshake that we had at the beginning of the game. Onto my Pathfinder games. Ian runs a game in which I play a kinetic knight, kineticist, and my job is to be a tank. So as a tank, I take it very personally when I fail to not prevent other people from taking damage, because it's actually a very hard thing to do in Pathfinder, but I feel like I've failed as my character to achieve the role as tank if I'm not either standing in front of the boss, going into every door first, taking the most hits, getting targeted the most. All those things make me feel like maybe I misplayed. But in reality, what's probably happening is Ian's sick of my shit, and he knows that he can't hit a 39 AC with some of his enemies for us, and so he sends them at other people so that it feels like a challenge. And that's respectable and admirable, because if a goblin is running at you with a butter knife and you're wearing a fucking bodysuit of Kevlar, he's not going to do anything to you. But if he sees your little wizard who's wearing pajamas and has the reflexes of, I don't know, like an 80-year-old man, he's probably going to try and stab that man with the butter knife rather than head-to-toe Kevlar boy. And I applaud that. If I am able to, I'm going to put myself between those two characters, the enemy and the weak party member, but it's not always a possibility. The other character that I'm playing right now is Dash, who is in a similar role of being tank, but it's more about having high hit points and somebody that the boss can reliably wail on, while the rest of my party can do damage to him, or CC him, lock him down so that we can come out of that fight victorious. I haven't played a ton of that character yet. Actually, I've only played him like twice as of the time of this recording. However, I will say that my previous character filled the same role and died doing it, and I'm totally okay with that, because the way he went out was badass. And even though it resulted in a roughly hour-long conversation about physics in the real world that made me want to blow my fucking head off, it was still great. It's still a memory, and I still loved every moment of playing my character Enzo. But he's also a tank, and sometimes the tank has to die. The last character that I'm playing is Emil. He is sort of a rogue in terms of filling the party's needs, so I'm going to pick locks and I'm going to find the traps. He's also the magic item creator in our party. So I spend most of my downtime upgrading our party's magical equipment and making their lives better by giving them fun treats with our party funds. And the other thing that my character does is a whole fucking lot of damage. So if they rely on me to deal a lot of damage, then I'm gonna try and do a lot of damage whenever I can. And then I think it's for that reason that my character dies so often. Because if I was playing him the most tactically sound in the way that makes my character safest, it would be he's always invisible. He does not attack every round. He waits for the perfect opportunity where the enemy that he wants to deal all of his damage to is completely tied up with somebody in his face, like either Ian's character or Robert's character. And I would position him in a way where attacking Emil would be disadvantageous to the enemy because they would either provoke an attack of opportunity or they would have to turn their back to whoever's standing in front of them. If I were to do that, my role would no longer be to deal damage. I feel like it would only be to build them cool new toys and pick locks and stuff. I feel like it would just be to survive. And I don't love the idea of playing a character in a way that is so tactically sound it feels impossible for you to lose, because he's invisible and he's flying 70 feet above the enemy and he's got all of his self buffs up and he's only going to attack when the perfect window arrives. That's just not how the character is built. The character is built to roughly every other round, or maybe every round, dump so many resources into an attack that he's rolling on average about 350 damage. That's if all the attacks hit and nothing goes wrong. About 350 damage. I say all of this perspective versus retroactive, and playing my role to finally articulate what I think is one of the hardest things to do when you play a TTRPG. And it is so memed on and so brutally, it is such the wrong choice at some points depending on your character, but it's playing how your character would react in a situation. And to do that, there could be a discussion on alignment to be had and stuff like that, but putting all of that aside, if you're playing an evil character, if you are playing a character who would be capable of doing something mega cringe and uncomfortable at a table that you can just hand wave away and say, this is how my character would react in this situation, or this is on par for their behavior, maybe you don't play that character. That's just going to be the foreword to this. The character that I'm mostly thinking about right now is Emil. My character is going through a sort of spiritual awakening with the god of death. Very similar to Vaxeldon from campaign 1 of Critical Role, actually. He had a brush with death. I took some levels to reflect that, and now I'm trying to... The god of death that I have sort of communed with a couple of times, I'm trying to further her goals, Pharasma's goals in the world, and be better about who I just nuke. To put it plainly, my character can deal so much damage that I could choose nearly anybody who's not on par with us and kill them in one round. And I'm trying to dial back the amount of times that I do that and to whom I do it to, because of this new relationship he has with the goddess of death. And there is a situation going on right now in our campaign where my character feels very at odds with another character. And funnily enough, again, this character is Jacob's character. But this is all out of love that this conflict comes from. We messaged each other with a check-in message. Well, actually, rather, he messaged me with a check-in, like, while we were, role-playing our frustrations with each other in-game. And he gave me a check-in, making sure that I was okay with everything, and if he needed to dial anything back. And while maybe outside of the game I was frustrated, and inside of the game my character certainly was pissed, I was able to lean back, maybe take a breath, and realize, okay, my character's pissed. I don't have to be pissed, because Jacob's character is pissed, but I don't think Jacob is pissed. And I think he has a plan that he's trying to act out, and he was speaking vaguely in character and, talking about things that I wouldn't understand and how all of this always goes. And through all of this obfuscation, I could kind of pick up the idea that maybe it's a plan that he has that he's going to make happen, but his character doesn't know that it's going to happen. And I could be wrong here. Certainly the case. Or certainly could be the case, rather. But I'm still going to play things how my character would react, and I'm going to do so knowing that my friend Jacob is okay with it, and I'm going to do so knowing that whatever retroactive feelings I might have towards it and things that I could think of happening because of this, I'm not going to let that weigh on me too heavily, and I'm not going to stop playing Emil in this dangerous, high-risk, high-reward way to keep him alive, and I'm not going to stop Emil's progression down this divine path to avoid hurting someone's feelings. Instead, I'm going to keep doing that, and I'm just going to check in with Jacob in and out of sessions make sure that things are okay, and maybe other players, as these tensions come to a head. But I checked with Ian after the last session, and because we took up a little bit of time in between a very tense combat to have a conversation with each other in character, that took maybe 20 minutes, and it was intense and emotional and had a lot of very big build up behind it. It's all almost come into that peak, that point of no return, but we're not there yet. But it's just adding layers to the situation. And I checked in with Ian to make sure, like, hey, that wasn't too bad, right? And Ian gave me a positive. That was, great role-playing. I was happy to sit back and watch it happen, even though it kind of happened when initiative was taking place, and maybe it shouldn't have been able to happen, but there was like a natural downtime for it to happen. So, I don't know, I'm rambling now. I just wanted to get some thoughts down about, really, the other day I had a thought about how one of my characters is fighting with Jacob again, and last time it ended the game, and I've been having some fears that would happen again, but I believe I have gotten better at playing around a party and playing around other people, that it's not something that I'm too worried about anymore. So to wrap that up, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great weekend, day, night, whenever you listen to it. Commute on your way to work, when you're mowing the lawn. We appreciate each and every one of you for listening. I'm pretty sure we know each and every one of you, and I guess I'm always Tyler.